Good morning, everybody, and welcome, and thank you for your attendance for this morning's meeting. As we open, are you happy to do that, Mark or Mark? Perform our opening karakia, please.
If I can find words, I can. Okay. Opening karakia. Yep. Right. Kia hura te marano, kia whakapapa paunamu te moana, hei huarahi mā tātou i te rangi nei, araha atu, araha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa. May peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for all of us to stay. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together.
Thank you, Mark. I have a call for any apologies. I have received one from Grace this morning. Do we have any further apologies?
No.
I'd like to move those apologies be accepted. You second it? Brian, Madsen, all in favour? Against? Carried. You've all had a chance to review the agenda this morning's meeting. Someone like to move that we confirm this morning's agenda?
Yep, happy to do.
Second it, please. Brian? Favour?
Aye.
Aye. Item 1.4, conflict of interest. I'd like to remind all members that if there is any items within the agenda that they may have a conflict, to please declare them now. I have a conflict statement I'll wish to read. I'll give this to you later on if you like. Just for this meeting and certainly probably the next one, I'm currently employed by the Kaipara District Council in a short fixed-term role. The views expressed by me during this meeting are my personal views only and are expressed in my capacity as Chair of the Raupo Drainage Committee and as a representative of the Drainage District Targeted Ratepayers. The opinions and views expressed are not in my capacity as an employee of the Kaipara District Council and are not necessarily the opinions of my employer or the elected members of the Kaipara District Council. This conflict of interest has also been declared with KDC.
I guess I should redo the stop bank reinstatement now. It's about to happen on our land. But my son-in-law deals with that, as Ian knows, more than me. In fact, 100% more than me.
Are there any further conflicts? Thank you. Confirm the minutes of the meeting 20th of July 2023. I'll take them as read. Is there any issues surrounding those minutes? I have none. I'd like to move that we confirm those minutes, please.
Yep.
Seconded, Greg. Those in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Carried. Item 3. 16 Wharf Road. The house. I'll take the report as being read, and then is there any discussion, open the floor for discussion on that report?
It's here now.
Oh, John here. Oh, sorry, John. I didn't realise it snuck in. Did you want to present to that, John? Yeah. Okay.
Morning all. Yes, as you said, if you take the report as read, obviously this is something that the committee is very familiar with, the house and its history, formerly owned by the Drainage Board before amalgamation in 1989. the house is obviously not occupied any longer, not rented. It's not able to be because it doesn't meet healthy home standards. So in effect, it is surplus. It would cost quite a bit of money to bring it up to a standard where it could be rented. So it does make sense for it to be sold. I understand the committee is keen for that money to be reinvested in the scheme. However, council's policy on the sale of assets is that it's used for the repayment of debt. But the committee can certainly request or recommend to the council that they make an exception to the policy and look to spend the money within the district. Happy to take any questions.
Yes, thanks, John. Just a couple of things with that report, just verifying the address.
Yes, I did note in a couple of places I've referred to as 18, it's actually 16.
Yeah, it actually has 18 on the front of it, so it's just,
Legally, it's not, it's 16.
Okay.
18 was the Plunkett room.
Right.
Property, yeah.
Okay, adjacent to it. Okay, for clarity. There's also just on page 2, I can't break it into a paragraph, but there is a sentence that the board has indicated at previous meetings. It should probably read that the committee has indicated at previous meetings.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. So is there any discussion on that? The recommendations are there. Well, the recommendation is there in front of us.
I guess for the councillor present, the uniqueness is, as you well know, the targeted rate has carried the loss on that house since I've been on the committee and years before that. That does make it a bit unique versus other council assets, and that it hasn't been profitable. So it's been funded out of the targeted rate. And wouldn't have been profitable since its transfer across, frankly.
Because I wondered also, possibly along those similar lines, there's something been floating around in my head about it, but if the argument could be made, I'd like to try this out on you, John. If we look at it as one form of asset within the Raupo drainage scheme, be transferred into another form of asset in the Raupo drainage scheme.
That's correct.
Yep.
That's the intention behind it.
Rather
Where the
than
committee stood.
being.
Well, certainly that will be the argument that I would be happy to put across on behalf of the committee in the report and officer's report to council.
I haven't researched to see what the report covered previously when it came before council just a few years ago. But I didn't see anything there in this most recent report which would get it across the line against the policy approach, other than the fact there's a different lineup around the table. And, you take your chance on that, I guess.
I don't believe it ever actually went to council for a decision. We may have had a workshop discussion on it at council.
Oh, is that where, I was aware it was before council in some form.
Yes, I think it was a workshop. I certainly came to the committee and then it went to a council workshop or a briefing after that. But
They didn't make a.
Yeah, and probably some background to that was because it was the direction of the committee at the time when it hit that stage that we would only have been in favour of selling the asset if we could materialise the equity from it to invest in drainage assets within the district.
Yeah,
and that was the responsibility to our ratepayer group, who have effectively been funding it they've been funding it since the drainage board days, but certainly since Kaipara District Council was formed, that all of the funding that has gone into that property has been funded by the ratepayer group.
Yep.
Yeah. But I guess on the other side of that, you also the rental from the house has come back to the scheme as well.
Yeah, correct.
What I'm saying is that, but the number of that is net negative. I mean, the last time it was rented, we ended up with what, 2,800, 2,500 unpaid.
Yes, yeah.
Never received. So it's never been an asset. It's been a liability.
Yeah, and since such time as it's been untenanted, it is a very clear liability.
Yeah. I guess the other question that the committee might want to put its mind to is what to do with the former office at the front, because it's all on the same title. So if you sold the property, you'd also be selling the offices. So, and
Right.
I think it actually adds value to the property. I think it would generally be probably an idea of folly to try and remove the building. It's you know, its historical status is not protected, is my understanding, but there is significance to it, and like I said, I believe it adds value to what's there.
Okay.
But from my personal view, would be to leave it as it's in its entirety and sell it as a whole. So, is there any further discussion on that? I note it is only a request for the funding to return to the district. There is no guarantees around that. That is for the ends to decide. But
Yes, and in terms of the recommendation we have, just looking at it a bit more critically, that was to go forward to council. The council might say yes to A and no to B.
that is in the back of my mind. That's why I just raised that point, that it is, the second part is a request.
Yes. So if it was said more like made conditional, sold on condition that the net proceeds are to the benefit of the.
John, can you comment on that and just the way the recommendation is worded?
the committee is free to change the recommendation. That was my crack at it, if you like. But if you wanted to make the recommendation conditional on the return of the funds, that would be one way of putting it.
I'm just thinking the actual of that.
Subject to council confirming you might change B to first, and then make a recommendation that subject to council agreeing to B that the committee recommends, for example.
Feeling on that. I mean, my personal opinion is I'd like a little bit more guarantee around it, but I understand there are no guarantees. It's the closest we've come to achieving what the initial goal was 4 or 5 years ago.
Obviously, one of the committee members will have to, submit to the change of recommendation.
Because we don't have a motion yet, do we?
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Still in the discussion stage. Greg, any more input on it? In regards,
I'm happy to change it, but I mean, continuing to own it doesn't seem to be a great idea either, frankly, because we just need to put targeted rates into a sinkhole.
So if it was sold, then at least the pain would stop in a sense of the loss incurred, but it's just,
But the obligation to the ratepayer group still exists, and that we would like to reinvest whatever the proceeds are into hard infrastructure. That is our core business and for the benefit of the ratepayer group.
And the timing, in a sense, couldn't be better because we've got so much ahead of us around capital spend. It's not like we're sort of business as usual at the moment. So I would think that should be fairly compelling for councillors, I would have hoped.
well, I'd like to hear from the other side of the room, actually.
Maybe I'd like to move that we could perhaps just adjust the wording of recommendation to reflect that, yes, we want the property sold, but we are quite sort of firm in that we really do want the asset to be basically returned in favour. And in fact, we put the capital into hard infrastructure of direct benefit. It's just really getting a little bit more clarity. At the moment, it is a request. It could go to, like you said, go to council. The elected members may decide that, yep, we'll sell the property, and no, they're not getting the money. Okay. Yep. No, I'm happy with that. Yep.
I mean, I'd be keen to advocate for it around the council table as long as I could see that we weren't setting up a precedent that was cause a problem later on.
Yeah, I understand. It is.
Can't think of anywhere else where this situation would apply.
Exist. Yeah, it is unique. And that has been the case we've pushed from the get-go. I mean, you know, even like I said, I've said this time before, is even the most basic of forensic accounting exercises would prove some form of inverted commas ownership.
Yeah,
In
I
effect.
think that's a doubt.
Yeah. So just to that effect, I'd just like to move that we just update the recommendation to read as it does, with the inclusion and allocates any net proceeds of the sale to the Raupo drainage scheme budget for capital works, basically including the final sentence of B and with the initial recommendation.
Yeah, yep. So it's
In its entirety, the recommendation will read: Raupo Drainage Committee recommends to Council that the former Raupo Drainage Board property at 16 Ruawai Wharf Road, Ruawai, be sold, legal description as this, and allocates any net proceeds of the sale to the Raupo Drainage Scheme budget for capital works.
Through the chair, just checking it's 16 that we're putting in there.
Well, legally, the property is 16. I've searched the title, so it might have 18 on the thing, but it
So yeah, it is 16.
the legal description is absolutely correct. So that is, you know, I think that's the more important thing, is why I've included it in the resolution rather than the number.
Got it, Grace? Can you hear us? Right.
Yes,
So-
hi, good morning.
I just have a motion before the committee. I'll just repeat it for your benefit, Grace. The Raupo Drainage Committee is recommending to Council that the former Raupo Drainage Board property at 16 Ruawai Wharf Road, Ruawai, be sold and allocates any net proceeds of the sale to the Raupo Drainage Scheme budget for capital works. I've moved that motion. I'm just about to put it to vote.
Thank you.
Second, yeah, so I've moved to have a seconder for that motion, please. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry, John. I have a seconder for that motion, please.
Great.
Grace, second that. All those in favour? Aye.
Right.
Again?
I was going to say something further too.
Sorry.
No, it's just that I think it's really important in terms of the story that is told, that we stress that it is for capital works rather than just to reduce operational costs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, just to keep that.
Yeah. And the capital works is stated in the recommendation and the motion.
Yes, it is.
That is.
In terms of the story that we told to support that.
Yeah, and maybe we can allocate it to a particular capital project, of which we've got a number of coming up.
Yep, something indeed underway. So, yep.
Okay, so with over, right, please. Carried. Thank you. That you want?
Oh, sorry.
No? One to scribble on. One, that's my one. Sorry. Item 4, the Raupo Drainage Operations Report. Can't be able to see it here. Do you want to present with us? I can. Okay. Take the operations report as read. There are a couple of couple of comments to make, and just in Wayne's defence, Wayne's been off work, so I actually helped compile this with the council staff, this operation. And that, so is there any comments from the floor regarding that report?
Just the first item there around risks. You weren't at the meeting, and I don't think, but 2 meetings ago, we spent a bit of time on risks. The committee did, and then it came to this committee and seemed, well, it had endorsement from council staff at that meeting.
We had a workshop after our last governance meeting, I believe.
It just then, it's been a long time, and our risks here remain. I think it's important our risks are accurate because it does help inform what we're going to spend our money on and the urgency around that. I mean, the whole substandard stop bank down there, for example, is not even there. So I don't know where that went to, but it just does need to actually get captured. I think it's important.
Where do we debated that, didn't we, internally?
Helen?
So, yeah, well, I'll take an action to bring it back to the next committee with an updated version of what the committee.
Yeah, it's ultimately your call, but it's our input into it.
No, good.
Then you make the call. And just the second one is also around communication with ratepayers. We're about to have 2 very sort of visual things happening. And I personally think it's hellishly important, but somehow we get a note out to our targeted ratepayers around what's happening. I mean, we're a secret society as of today, and they pay a lot of targeted rates and they have an absolute right to know where their money's going. So that seems to be going nowhere as well. So I'm happy to draft something. I'll have a crack at it that you can alter.
Sure.
But there is actually some urgency in that. Otherwise, you get community chatter and a million things happen, and it's the last thing we want, frankly.
And in addition to that, highlighting the capital works we're doing, the committee were keen to get a basic document out, just informing targeted ratepayers of their obligations.
Yep, exactly.
To the district.
That's dead right.
Regards to what they can and can't, shouldn't do for the benefit of all.
Because we had some things done to our drainage district that have been done through ignorance. Basically, people buy in a property here and have no idea what their obligations are.
And that was referred back to staff because when the committee could have worded something about their obligations around the legal wording of whatever we put into that document. So it was referred back to
Well,
staff.
I'm happy for you to draft something and then we'll work through our comms team.
Great, because we've got a community newsletter and there's a Facebook page for Raupo. So there's 2 very direct methods if we want to use those channels to get something out.
Okay.
So the actions, are you happy if Ian and I have a crack at that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
If you feed it back through Alana, we'll make sure it gets captured and then get the team involved.
Thanks.
Okay, try and keep that moving. Just in regards to the drain spraying, it was due to start yesterday. It is starting this morning, I believe. I contacted them this morning, just been holding off because of water levels. Obviously, they're not where we would quite like them, but the time has come just to pull the trigger on that job before we find ourselves in another situation where we were last year with weather. Just from an operational perspective, they've sort of been asked to target the feeder drains rather than the arterials at the moment, because the arterials are still carrying a little bit much water, but the feeder drains themselves are a bit lower. And the drainage crew will be updating Wayne and I on a daily, if not weekly basis, regarding to their findings on that. Everything else is just tracking on as read. The alternative pump drive, all of the gear is there. Cromptons were pretty keen to get into the job. We just asked them just to tie-ho for a little bit, given that the water table is still quite high. Any weather event could require pumping, so we want to time that because it involves disassembly of the pump motor. So we're just going to wait till we've got a better weather window. That job actually kicks off, but it's ready to go. Wayne, do you have any input? Have you read that? Have you read this?
Part of that, the only other things going on is floodgate. You know, is it
Yes. Yep.
programmed? That's the only big one apart from stop bank works.
yeah, we could probably do at the conclusion of this, everyone's available, we can do a working group update on that, on those works. Right, I'd like to move that the operations report, oh, sorry, no.
Just like to make a comment too. I had a quick drive past the Phoenix Palms removal down Wallace Road,
Yes,
bit of a bomb site. And I imagine there'll be a lot of seeds there, like a huge seed bank. And I presume you just keep an eye on that.
we'll be monitoring the site. Yeah, we've talked to that situation with the property owner. With discussions with them, we'll just monitor the regrowth. The stumps were to be
Drilled and sprayed, and then we'll just,
painted.
the seedlings will come up.
We're just waiting for the conditions to try and dispose of the big pile.
Yeah. Do they burn?
The way we're leaving them as long as we practically can to try and get it down as much. And we'll look at chipping or disposing of what we're left with after we've reduced the pile. Again, everything's been hinging around the weather, which we all know has not been fantastic.
That was all I had to say.
So yeah, again, I'd like to move that we accept the drainage operations report for November. Second for that, Greg. Those in favour? Aye. Thanks, Wayne. Okay. Item 5, call Jessie up to speak on the financial.
Thank you. So in the document pack are 2 financial reports on the financial activities of the district. One report is for the year end for 30 June 2023, and the other is for the 3 months ended 30 September. The year end report for 30 June saw 713,000 of rates revenue, 423,000 of operating expenditure, and 98,000 spent on capital. That resulted in 192,000 being added to your carry forward balance, and at year end there was a total carry forward balance of 923,000. Now for the current financial year ending in June next year, if all the budgeted figures for operating and capital costs are actually spent, you're projected to end the year with 451,000 in your carry forward balance. However, currently actual spending is behind on budget, and as it stands at 30 September, you have approximately $1 million available in your carry forward balance. So those were the results of those 2 reports. We also wish to communicate with you that for the long-term plan we are currently working on, which commences on 1 July 2024, we're looking at revising how we calculate and allocate the internal recharges. So we should see some update there. And alongside this long-term plan work as well, the revenue and financing policy is being reviewed. And as part of this policy, we're looking at abolishing the A and B differential rate with a view to applying that rate uniformly for the next LTP onwards. And this is going to be consulted on as part of that policy amendment. For the next financial year, starting 1 July 2024 as well, we are planning to collect the same rate, targeted rate revenue, just over 700,000. So if you would like to see that changed, this is your opportunity to tell us. I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, thanks, Jessie. Hey, just Joseph, for clarity, the LTP review regarding, was it the administration cost analysis that you were talking about?
That's right, just how the overheads are allocated against. And it's across the whole of.
And how they charge back?
Yes, that's right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Is that going to be a good news or a bad news story?
I'm hoping it's a good news. We're just working out some ways to do it because it's across the whole organisation. It's not just how we allocate it to Raupo. So we're working on some different ways of doing it, and we'll see. I'm looking at how it will affect Raupo, but it has to be to apply it to everybody. So hopefully.
I mean, for context, Mark, I mean, this is the discussion we've been having for the last 2 or 3 years, but as our budgets have increased through inflationary pressures and everything else, the administration cost has almost travelled on up with it. It's almost being charged, or my personal opinion, was almost being charged like a commission cost rather, because the budget was X. The administration fee would be, and whether that's the case or not.
It has been charged.
It's a perception.
It is a perception, yeah. It has been charged in line, I think, with the rating revenue. So as the rating revenue goes up, the charge goes up. So we're just looking at a different way of applying those costs. Hopefully it works out a bit more fairer.
That's become apparent in the last few years. It's good. That is good news. Thank you.
Have you modelled, Jessie, have you modelled the A and B rate? And are there any particular outliers?
Yeah, so we actually did. I'll just try and find the email, but it's very little change for most, like talking a dollar change. There is a couple. I'm just trying to find, how have I got it? I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, but the rates team have done the calculations on who's going to be affected. Oh, hang on, here it is. And it is greater than $100, only 28 properties are affected in that group. And less than $100 is 242 properties. The highest impact for somebody is 780 and the next highest is 450. So somebody does get affected significantly, but most don't get much difference. That helps.
Yeah, it does. Thanks. Okay, that'll help. And I should know the answer to this, but I don't. Our funds and credit, is there any use of funds money come back to us or not?
Well, I'm not aware of that.
I mean, like interest?
Yes.
No.
So I guess, Mark, it's another lever around the house because of the capital works ahead, we've actually have for a very long time, very solid credit balances. Council get free use of the money, which is, I'm not going to debate it. Actually, another good reason around the house, $1 million as of today, overnight interest rate on that's quite reasonable with where rates currently are. So, I mean, there's quite a subsidy going back the other way as well. I don't want to change that, but I think it's be another argument for you.
Yeah.
And just for context too, that those that may not be familiar why the current balances have been keeping up is there's the financial prudence factor, which this committee has always operated under, having that rainy day fund, because in this business unexpected things do happen. Yeah, and the other one, particularly around this year, was just the last 18 months have been abhorrent to actually achieve any capital work. So there's a lot of funds being carried through.
I am under the understanding you've got quite a few capital works coming up.
We have, yeah.
And yeah, just if you had any comments on your targeted rating amount, now would be the.
I think,
future.
I don't know, Greg, whether you should have some comment on this. I'd toss this around briefly with Wayne prior. This coming year, we opted for a 0% increase.
That's right.
Rightly or wrongly, perhaps it's prudent that we should probably factor in whether there's a CPI adjustment.
Okay.
Just an inflationary adjustment. I don't think there's no significant operational costs that are heading our way that we're aware of that we can't fund through the existing budgets.
And as well, I'm just looking at the next report. I think it's like 340,000 has been the planned spend for the LTP. So you will still have a buffer in there if you keep it at the same.
The only
put up by a CPI.
Apart from the inflationary pressures, there is a cost increase that's been indicated through our spraying contract for next year. We've negotiated again pretty hard to keep it status quo, but that is unsustainable.
I think you'd only go to, I would only go to 0 if I knew I could get cost out that equated to CPI. Otherwise, you are going backwards.
Yeah.
And councils are great at underspending, aren't they? And we don't want to be one of those committees that do that.
I mean, I'm not one for rating increases for the sake of rating increases, but in this I'm confident that we should at least be factoring a CPI adjustment.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you.
Which is in clarification. So that's the national inflation rate for the national economy overall, as opposed to construction cost index, which would be significantly higher, I suspect.
Yeah, it would. We've had the ability to absorb a lot of those costs that came our way, like certainly post-COVID. just through our previous management. And carrying, we've had funds there to balance, offset it, but that can only go for so long.
And so to clarify, would you like us to apply the construction?
I
Inflationary?
think that number would be quite frightening. I think I would be more comfortable with just the the recognised CPI, consumer price index adjustment.
Might speak to horses otherwise.
And to be fair, it's probably not justified. Do you need a motion to that effect, or?
No, I've just made that note. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further comments, Jesse, on that financial report, guys? Thank you. I'd like to move we get the financial reports, June 23, September 23 update. Brian Mason moved, seconded. Councillor Vincent. All those in favour? Aye. Against?
Aye.
Carried. Now we now have item 6, which was the addition to the agenda pack, which is in front of you.
Previously, it's just the image. It's
It's one at the one page on its own.
page.
Online.
Oh, Helen's here.
Helen is here.
Helen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Could you like to present on item 6, the LTP draft submission?
Thank you. I'll take the report as read. This was done in response to a late request for some information about what was happening as an update from a previous report that had gone to council in May. So just providing an update in that scenario. So that's where we're at right now. So the request came to us fairly late for an update. We do have all the information, but it's a little bit piecemeal, which is why the report is structured as it is, and comments that we will do some additional work to make sure that we line it up in a better format. We do have a couple of tools that we can utilise for this, and I'm proposing that we use our activity plan and just put all the activities, current and future, into that, and then we can give you an extract of that on a fairly regular basis so that you can see that those items are progressing forward.
Thanks, Helen. And just for context to the remainder of guys in the room, this is primarily, but not excluding, but primarily around the recommendations from the Chair's report regarding Cyclone Gabrielle and the effects of. There were various recommendations within that report. The recommendations that fell within the mandate and the ability of the Drainage Committee to rectify are in hand, and the purpose of this was that we can remain updated on those recommendations of works, etc., that need to be done that sit outside the committee's mandate. And the purpose of that was just to really keep it active, if you like, so we can keep abreast of. There were some significant recommendations within that cyclone report that had implications across council, and this is a way that we can just be kept informed of how those items are progressing. Are you comfortable with that description, Helen?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Can I just make a comment, Ian, please, through the chair?
Yeah, Grace, go ahead.
So if it's works outside of the Raupo Drainage Board mandate, I just want to get it right in my head. So we just in this pack, just looking at a watching brief on what happens outside of our mandate. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there was, I can single out one of the recommendations in particular was around roading heights.
Yes.
Now there's been some degradation in roading heights, and the impacts were noted. This is not every road in the district, but there are some critical ones that we've identified. So obviously we don't control roading budgets and have any mandate to order this works be done, but it's just our way of following up on those items that we cannot directly influence.
Okay, no, totally understand, because I've got a complaint at the moment into Waka Kotahi about the height of the State Highway 12 going into No Mai Marae. So yeah, I just want to make sure I've got it right in my brain.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
Yeah,
And
again,
through the chair, Grace, I'll just add to that, we were also looking at trying to get funding sources that are outside of what the Raupo Drainage Committee would then need to fund. So there is, so we're trying to work on a couple of different fronts. So there's items where the budgets sit outside the Raupo Drainage Committee, and then there's also funding applications that we're trying to do that would be work that would benefit the drainage district, but wouldn't necessarily aren't going to be funded by the committee fund.
Okay, thank you.
The
Very
district fund.
clear. Thank you very much.
All good.
Mark.
Yeah, I'd actually like to follow on from Grace on this, because that was a matter I was going to raise, because I didn't see it here in a line item. But surely this committee can advocate in support of that issue being dealt with by the council, because I do see it's a critical element of the drainage scheme working successfully and keeping the subcatchments separate from each other rather than running
And
into.
it was this submission, this draft submission is this hopefully the start of that process. I'm hoping this becomes a live agenda item going forward. So there's continual updates in regards to what's happening surrounding that. The concern from within the committee was that sometimes these reports are made and they drop off the radar. So it's very much our intention to keep this, the outcomes from that report very much alive and front and centre.
Because Anna knows I've raised it once or twice at the council table.
Yeah.
Just to try and keep it alive, as you said.
Yes, and it's very much, and that was my intention, having this included. And it is something, I probably didn't get this request in soon enough. And going forward, once the teams had more chance to gather information, we'll be able to get more formal updates on where it's sitting. So that's the intent. Well, that was my intent of bringing it up.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the time of year when everybody wants more of something and cheaper rates.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we're in a competition.
Yes.
And there's actually, from that specific item, there is a return on that investment.
Yes. And I think too, there was possibly a misconception from the, through informal discussions with other elected members, that there's a misconception that while we're talking about roading heights, there was an assumption that all roading heights in the district needed to be raised, and that's not actually the case. There's some that need to be raised very much sooner rather than later, and there's some roading heights that are not so critical. So it's just, about working together to get it done, in short.
So Chair, to that, when it refers to a matrix listing these things, I guess the priority of them will be important because we can't do everything at once.
That's correct, yeah.
When are we going to see that?
Helen,
Helen, we can bring that back to the next committee?
Through the chair, that's the intention, is that we'll bring it back to the next committee meeting, and the priority will obviously be identified in that. We tend to use a criticality based on timing of urgency, rather than just saying it's a priority 1, 2, or 3, because they can get lost. So we tend to look at a time frame as our criticality measure, but that will be included in the matrix that we pull together.
Okay, great, thank you.
okay. Is there any further discussion on item 6? Brad? Someone like to move, we note the item 6 land drainage long-term plan draft submission. David? Would you like to move that item?
Oh, I think we'll have a turn.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Second, please.
Actually, good if perhaps someone else from the.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm happy to second that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So that concludes all the agenda items this morning. Mark?
Oh, we've got Grace here now. If she'd like.
Grace. Grace, would you like to perform our closing karakia, please?
Oh, kia ora, tēnā koe, Ian. My apologies also for being late. I'm just basking myself in the sun in Nelson. So, hence the
Weren't
attire.
you in Rarotonga last meeting?
So what?
I'm just jealous, that's all.
Yeah. So, so heading our way back up onto the North Island. But then the ferry got a hole in it, so we're here for another 5 days. So, yeah, it's I don't know whether that's a blessing or an emptying of my pocket. So, but anyhow, e noi tātou. Kia tātou katoa te ata whai o tō tātou ariki e ihu karaiti. Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhina taitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake tonu, āmene.
Amen.
Good.
Good, Grace, thank you.
Kora.
I declare the meeting closed. Thanks, team.
Bye.
Bye. How we got for time?
Into 11.
10:50.
Ripping through it, eh? Just want to